welcome to another edition of One on One. I'm your host, Tyler Small, and today we have another notable alum from the Salle University family. She works now as an assistant news director and morning anchor for Metro News. It's Carrie Hodousek. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Tyler.
So we'll get back into your back and forth because we were talking a little bit off air about how you started here in West Virginia with Metro News and now you're back, but you've just been there for 3 months. What's it been like since you've returned back to your first home in the business?
Yeah, short time back, but returning back to where I got my start in news was like a family reunion. People were hugging me and congratulating me for coming back. And I started here in West Virginia, Charleston, the capital city, working as a reporter, doing day-side assignments. Pretty much any general stories you have out there, I covered, and left. And we can get more into this later on, but I left to go to San Francisco for 3 years, really cut my teeth in that major market of a business, and then returned here to Charleston, West Virginia, where now I oversee a lot of the news operations along with my boss, who is the news director. So I'm the assistant news director, and I run the morning news. I write all of the news, 6 to 9, Monday through Friday, with my co-anchor, Chris Lawrence. And it really is such an exciting job. Can't wait to get more into it.
Wow. So you actually write all of it, not just stories that pertain to you, or you kind of put the whole show together?
Yes, I am the writer, editor, news gatherer, any job you could think of, that's me in the morning. So I get in at 3 a.m., which sounds exhausting, but it's exhilarating at the same time because you're really collecting all of the news that happened overnight. We have somebody who stays until about 11, 12 o'clock in the morning, and then I come in, pick up what happened in those last 3 hours, and you'd be surprised. I mean, you have a lot of really crime, but there's also stuff that does break overnight. I mean, it is news, and it's, even though I'm in a smaller city like Charleston, West Virginia, there's a lot that happens in just a small rural town, but it's also a capital city with a lot of politics and all of that. But yeah, so I write all of the news. I write scripts, which was what I was taught in college as well. But then I go on the air from 6 to 9, and the first couple segments throughout the morning news, I do a long 5 to 6 minute segment of just me giving an update. And then it's a lot of back and forth with my co-anchor, Chris Lawrence. And we do national news as well. We use we're an ABC affiliate, so we have ABC reporters on our air too. So just a lot of news writing, a lot of short writing, to the point, sound bites and interviews that we've done throughout the day. And it really helps too to have that nat sound, is what we call it, of just that sound you hear of everyday things happening to add to our broadcast.
And that sound is certainly, I'm sure you've learned from your LaSalle time. That's something that echoes in the mind of a lot of students now, sometimes for bad reasoning if they got a bad grade because of that. But it's
for national sound, for people that don't know.
Yes, right. But wow, that's very interesting. Do you feel that the fact that you are kind of piecing this whole show together, doing so much of the grunt work before you get on air, because everyone that's kind of outside the industry just thinks you just waltz in, get on air, and you're going through with it, just reading a script, but you kind of know it to a very deep aspect because you did all the research. Do you feel like that helps you when you're on air, just to be able to talk about it with more confidence because you know?
Yeah, so being in news, I feel like you can't not pay attention to what's happening when you're not on air and not in the building. So when I leave, I'm constantly on Twitter. I'm constantly looking up what's going on. Yes, I have downtime where I hang out with friends and family, but you always have to be in check. You can be called at any time. I mean, it's very rare that I get called to a breaking news story in the position that I'm currently in. But out in San Francisco, when I was a reporter there for KCBS radio, I could be called anytime on the weekend, overnight. I just had to be prepared. And to write a show like that, you kind of have to have a general knowledge of the people that are here, the cities. I mean, I moved to Charleston, and there was a town named Hurricane, spelled hurricane, but it's pronounced hurricane without the E. You wouldn't know that unless you're a local here. And if you don't brush up on that type of research of how towns are pronounced, how people's names are said, people aren't going to trust you. And that's what I've learned, being wherever you are, whether you're in small town America or big New York City, people want to be able to trust the people that they're watching on the air, that they're listening to every morning. And so it's important to know what you're going to say before you actually sit down and write a newscast.
Wow. Well, there's a lot to unpack from that. Before I get to that last part, because that's very interesting. I want to go back. So you said that you did have more experience getting called in the middle of the night, going to the scene to get a live story.
Yeah. So out in California, wildfires are happening pretty much year round now, which is very scary. And we're not used to that being in Philadelphia or even on the East Coast, West Virginia. We have no idea what that's like. So that was eye-opening to me. So I would be away on a weekend trip and get a call, hey, there's a fire that's breaking out, not a house fire, not, something that's, that's still a big deal, but something that's scorching acres and acres of land. And you have to be on the scene because people need to know, wait, is my home being threatened? So I would get calls like that. A lot of what was happening during last year with Black Lives Matter demonstrations, I was called to those. I was at a rally one time and I got tear gassed. You just never know what's going to happen. And you have to have all the tools in your bag to say, hey, I need to be prepared for anything. A lot of times with my job, though, the good side of it is being in radio. I don't have to worry about doing my hair and makeup like I did for this interview. So I'm out in jeans and sneakers. My hair's pulled up. I don't have any makeup on. But in the wildfire situation, I'm dealing with ash falling from the sky. I have producers calling me on the phone. I'm on a deadline. That's another thing we can talk about, is learning how to adapt to tight deadlines and being on the air at certain times. There's a lot. So
well, that should at least open the eyes, let alone terrify some people that want to get into this industry, because that you were put through the gauntlet this past year, it seems like.
I really was. And with COVID, it was so different. And people ask me all the time, how did you do your job as a news reporter, not being in the newsroom? Well, funny enough, my job really never required me to be in the newsroom because I was always out. I would come in every day. This is out in San Francisco mostly, and check in with my news director, say, hey, what's going on? Hey, I saw this happening. That's another thing too, is you're given story assignments, but really you're expected, the more experience you have in this industry, to come in with story pitches and say, hey, I saw this, and not just be handed an assignment to know what's going on. Because sometimes your news director, believe it or not, even though they've been doing this for a long time, we miss things. I know I miss things all the time. So, being able to come into the newsroom, talking about what's happening in the news, and then leaving. I did a lot of phone interviews, but I did that from the comfort of my bedroom and my laptop. I had a lot of people helping me in the newsroom, but yeah, COVID and everything, I wasn't able to talk to people like in radio. I love it because it's really intimate. You get that one-on-one with someone. You don't have to worry about setting up a whole camera and lighting and everything that goes into it. I can just hold my recorder and say, this is my phone, and say, hey, so what do you think about what's going on? And people are actually really relaxed when they have a radio person talking to them because they don't have to worry about how their hair looks. And so I feel like I was able to get really genuine, real life, call them sound bites, but of responses that I would get from people. And so, but with COVID, I had to have a long mic stick. So it would be like a 6-foot long pole because I had to keep my distance from people. I had to be masked up. And yeah, it was for sound quality purposes and what we do with like broadcasting and media and trying to get the best quality. The content lacked, but we tried to make up for it with just keep asking the same questions we normally do.
So it sounds like now you are obviously very happy where you are now and that you are enjoying the radio aspect in comparison to San Francisco for the past couple of years. Do you feel, especially now, because it seems you have a lot more responsibilities in this role,
yeah,
do you feel that you were given this, especially from the same company, because of the nitty-gritty work that you did in those years prior? Is that the main reason you feel that you are where you are now?
I really do. When I started this career, I said, I want to be a TV reporter. That was my goal. I wanted to, and I didn't just want to be on TV just for the glitz and glam of it. I mean, we study journalism because we want to be able to inform people, and that's what I wanted to do. But I just thought television was so fun and so cool. And so, going back to when I just had graduated from LaSalle in 2013, which seems like forever ago, I tried to intern for TV stations and I wasn't getting calls. And I think it was because I still needed a couple more years experience. And so I interned for a radio station at KYW News Radio in Philadelphia. And that was so great because it opened my eyes to, hey, this isn't the only option I have is television or newspaper. There's radio too. And some people can forget about radio. I mean, we have podcasts now, everything's digital, and so there's streaming. And so radio really is a growing industry, and the news division as well. I mean, you have sports and all of that. And so when I got to West Virginia, I was at Philly, and I said to my KYW news director, I was like, I need to get in the field. I'm so tired of answering phones, and I love being here in the newsroom, and it's really high energy, and I love helping the other reporters, but I want that to be me. And she said, I'm sorry, we don't have any opportunities for you, but keep plugging away. And my only idea of plugging away was getting my hands dirty and getting in the field. And so when I got to West Virginia, I felt like that is when I really cut my teeth at MetroNews, and WCHS is the local Charleston station, because it was okay to mess up in a smaller market. And that's what a lot of people that are in college don't realize is you want to get to that big Philly or New York City job. It's not going to happen right away. You have to kind of step back and say, okay, I need to learn from people, and I need to learn in a small town, and it will require me to move, and you have to be okay with that and meeting new people. That's another thing that's really great about this job. I met people from all over the country living in different towns, but when you're in that small town, you're able to mess up, not, big, huge mistakes, but you can learn from them. And that's what Charleston, West Virginia did for me, so that it catapulted me into San Francisco. And then in San Francisco, I did what I did there. I can go on and on about that, but coming back to West Virginia, I don't think I would have been able to be in the position I am as an assistant news director and a main morning anchor if I didn't leave to a bigger market and come back. And some people even said to me, why would you come back to a smaller market? Well, it's because I always wanted that big market experience. I felt like I got it, so that I didn't have any regrets. If I stayed in Charleston, I would have kept thinking, oh, what if? And I did that what if, and then I came back, and now I feel like I'm stronger than ever in my news writing, in my presentation and my delivery of news, in the way I communicate with people too. Also being in broadcasting, and I'm sorry that I'm rambling, I used to be a very shy person in college. I never, you're shocked because I tell people that all the time. I never spoke in class. The only time I talked to my professor was maybe one-on-one on the side, but I didn't talk. I was so shy, so nervous. This job, if you allow it, really opens you up as a person to be able to talk to anyone and everyone. I've talked to people as high as, we have US Senator Joe Manchin here in West Virginia, who's such a high political figure, to somebody who is living on the streets and doesn't know when their next meal is coming from. It just ranges so much, and you have to be able to adapt. And I think the best thing about this job too is being able to relate to people as a human being too. Doing stories that are the hardest stories, and you may or may not be asking me this next question, but the hardest stories for me is people that are dealing with trauma. And you have to be able to talk to them and say somebody lost their family member in a car accident or in a shooting. And in our minds in news, we think, oh, this is great that we're getting this person to comment on what happened. But you have to think about the human aspect too in your journey too. And this is my advice to students. You have to think about, if I'm not a reporter right now, I'm a human being, and I'm talking to somebody who's going through something. And those are just some of the many lessons I've learned doing this.
I mean, I would love if you could just kind of continue that point. I don't know if you actually can, because it is such a difficult
Sure.
concept to talk about without actually examples, but how difficult is it when sometimes it seems to transcend journalism, where it seems to be a human to human problem? How often do you have to deal with that, and how do you even deal with that?
It's not very often, but when it does happen, it hits you like a ton of bricks.
Mhm.
You're not expecting it. Sometimes you go into this situation preparing, saying, okay, this is going to be a really difficult story, and I have to be sensitive to these people. But for example, there was this one story I did out in Northern California. This woman lost her home to a wildfire. I know I talk about fire stories all the time, but because that's what we did a lot in San
Oh, and it
Francisco.
was national news
Yeah.
throughout. Yeah.
But there was this mail carrier. She was in a town, Geyserville, California. She was the town's only mail carrier, lost her home in a wildfire, and she still went to work every single day. And so we found the story, and I said, I want to go talk to this woman. I want to go follow her on her mail route, see what she does every day. And we actually ended up doing a follow-up story with her during COVID too, how hard it was to still be out in the community and seeing the people she interacted with. And she couldn't hug them because of social distancing and all of that. But the first time we went to go see her, or I went by myself, I should say, um, she showed me the ground, and I was like, oh, where's your house? She goes, this is where it used to be. And I was shocked. I knew I was going to a place where I was going to see her burn down home, but I thought maybe half of it was still going to be there. No, everything was gone. She said she lost her wedding ring, all these different, special items. And as I was talking to her, it was the first and maybe the only time I've ever cried during an interview speaking to this woman, because she was so moving, speaking from the heart. And I felt for her. And that's sometimes what you have to do, is just you feel for people in that moment. I've turned the microphone off sometimes, and I've just been like, out of respect, you know, I want to cut this short because this is hard for both of us, especially the person that you're talking to. So yeah, so many times where it's, you just have to have a good judgment call when you're talking to people.
Wow. Well, I'll certainly make sure to put a link in the description or something to bring us to that interview, because that
Sure.
is a moving story just from what I've heard. But we could dive into these stories forever. I'm going to try and bring it back to our last question here, to bring it back to your days at LaSalle. You talked about some of the things that you learned from there, whether it was the script writing or the fact that you used to be shy, which is, as you said, shocking to me because of how easily you speak now. What do you think was the main attribute that you learned at LaSalle that you still carry on to today and has helped you get to where you are today?
I think what I learned at LaSalle is persistence, never giving up. I know we always say never stop exploring, and we kind of chuckle at that, but it's really true, because like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to be in TV. And when you're in college, even after you graduate, you think you want to do certain things, but life takes a hold of you and you really have to do what you enjoy. And so what I found at LaSalle is I was in journalism classes where I was doing a lot of newspaper writing, and I thought, this is great, but I want more. I don't want to just write a newspaper article. I want to add sound to it. I want to add color to it. And so whenever I did a news article, funny enough, I always did a radio wrap with it, and I would present it to my professor, and she would always say, you don't have to do this additional work. I didn't ask you to do, because sometimes we would do a video report with it. I think one of our assignments was to do that. We partnered up with someone, but I would always do a 30-second radio wrap. And she goes, well, we're not really doing radio. We're doing newspaper writing. And that was just me. I was excited. I had done internships with KYW, and it was just something that motivated me. And so I would say what I learned was just, if it's something that you love, pursue it, because I know it sounds cliche, but life really is too short to do something you don't enjoy. I've actually gone to interviews where they don't have anything to do with radio, and I'm just maybe trying to figure out my options. I've been in a lull period where I'm like, do I stay in radio? Do I stay in broadcasting? The second I was in the interview, it was actually for a public relations job. They asked me, so why do you want to leave radio? And it was a valid question. And I said, oh gosh. And my heart sunk. I said, I don't want to leave radio. And that's the moment I knew I think I'm meant to do this for very, hopefully the rest of my time, working full time.
Wow. Well, I know all of us here at the LaSalle community are rooting for that too, for you to be in the industry for a long time. Carrie, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you giving us a lot of insight and some great stories.
Thank you so much. I really enjoy it. And thank you. I miss LaSalle. LaSalle was awesome. It taught me so much. I met great friends, but I really found a home in broadcasting, and I hope other students can find the same.
We hope so too, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. And thank you for watching this edition of One on One. We'll see you again next time.